Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Whisper of the Oracle. Today I will be talking about the high C spoilers that we just got on the new hero cards, and especially focusing on what the heroes are trying to achieve based on the very limited knowledge we have available. Let's get started. So probably LSS started thinking, how can you synergize with gold? Well, let's take a look at it. Gold, first of all, it's an item, so you can create item synergies. It draws a card, so you can create card draw synergies. It's a token, so there could be some token creation or token destruction synergies. It has an action ability, so maybe there could be various synergies on when you activate actions or have go again, like Arc Lightning does. And it also costs 2 resources to activate, so maybe that's something you can take into account when you try to figure out the synergies. That maybe fully red line heroes don't work in a gold set because you actually have to pay to pop the gold, for example. But it seems that the ones that have been selected based on the knowledge so far are item synergies with the Mechanologist and card draw synergies with the Ranger. Least. Let's look at the heroes one by one. First of all, we got Puffin Hightail, a pirate mechanologist hero with an ability that says action, a new symbol, which I assume means kind of like tap in Magic. So I'm just going to call it tap for now. And if it turns out to be something different, then it's something different. But I think it's like a tap or an exhaust icon. It kind of looks like a wave. So maybe it sort of refers to the tide or something in the thematic universe, but I'm just going to call it tap for now, because that's what I assume it is. It says action, tap, destroy a gold you control, create a golden cog token. The second time you crank each turn, draw a card. What you notice first is that you want gold because gold turns into golden cogs. And golden cogs seem to be the things that improve your cards and may kind of act as material for your other cards. And the one example we got was Golden Sky Warden, where you can galvanize, where galvanize of course gives you more block value when you block with this card, and then you destroy an item when you block with it. But if you destroy a golden cog, you also create a gold token and can repeat the process, meaning that instead of getting what seems like 1 extra block, you kind of get like 2 extra block for free, because you can also then galvanize the gold. Or maybe you keep the gold for other uses for the future. So that's kind of one way of using golden cogs as kind of a material, but I expect there to be plenty of others, because this is very much the core of the hero. Gold also gives you additional items that they don't crank, so they don't fulfill the condition of the second ability, but they may interact in other ways. So for example, the simplest one is again galvanize. You can always just galvanize your gold. If you have 10 gold, you have plenty of extra block on all of your galvanized cards. But the exciting part of this hero is the second ability, because it has the most exciting thing that a card player likes to see is drawing a card. You crank twice, you get a full extra card, and that's of course huge value. Very often hero abilities give you like +1 value per turn. Think of Ira, for example, as the simplest example. Here you get a full extra card, meaning that it's much more than 1 value. It's kind of like 3 value. So if you can do this every turn, you get a full extra card every turn. That's insane. That's kind of like Dash.io playing a card off the top of their deck every turn, but this time for free, right? Because Dash had to pay for it with 1 resource. So they got kind of like 2/3 of a card for free. Now you're getting a full card for free. And what it probably means is how it's probably balanced is the fact that in order to crank twice every turn, you need to play a ton of items. And playing a ton of items, we know from Dash.io, means that your deck blocks horribly because items don't block. So it's again giving us the same trade-off of very risky ratios versus super high upside of kind of having extra cards on your turn. And one more thing to notice with this hero is that the first ability doesn't have go again. So either you're creating action points in some way, or this is just a way to end your turn when everything else kind of had go again. So maybe you were boosting in Constructed, at least. I'm not sure if the boosting will be a thing in this set, but maybe you were boosting, maybe you were doing other go again things on your turn, and then you end your turn by turning one of your goals into a golden cock. Maybe that's the way you play this. All right, we have Marlin, Treasure Hunter, a pirate ranger hero with action, tap, destroy a gold you control, create the Goldfin Harpoon in your hand, go again. And whenever you draw a card during your action phase, you may put an arrow from your hand face up into your arsenal. So this is kind of like reload, but it's face up, so it's just loading an arrow. What's interesting to note here is that you seem to be benefiting from gold in 2 different ways. You can turn gold into these harpoons, which are, I assume, ephemeral arrow attack actions. And then you benefit from gold also by having this card draw synergy. This card draw synergy is something we already visited in heavy hitters, where gold was a big thematic and a big mechanic where drawing cards gave your card, other cards extra abilities or gave them plus attack or something like that for the weapon. Here, gold lets you reload or load, which means that you both want to be creating these arrows and drawing cards off of the gold. So there's a bit of a trade-off on which one you want to do on which turn. The other interesting thing we see here is that the card Big Game Trophy Shot, which seems to be a 2-cost pump that pumps your next arrow attack by 4, and if it has Harpoon in its name, it gets, when it hits, it create a gold token, right? So there's your way of creating gold tokens. Some of these arrows will probably be creating gold as on hits. You'll kind of get the loot from the other ships or however you think about it. But then it has this like seemingly random ability of draw a card, then discard a card added to a pump. And the first thought is, of course, drawing a card enables your second ability. So it lets you load an arrow. So this is kind of a pump plus load an arrow, kind of like a reload pump. But also the fact that you're drawing a card and discarding a card could hint at potentially graveyard filling being a thing. Because the same looting, drawing a card, discarding a card, it used to be called looting in Magic, or probably still is. It's very similar to what the Necromancer wants to be doing. So this kind of hints at there probably being some synergy. And it's been speculated that you can maybe create harpoons from arrows in your graveyard as well. And this would make a lot of sense. Finally, we have the Pirate Necromancer hero, Gravy Bones. I'm not a big fan of this name. I know, LSS likes their puns and they like their wordplay, but still not a huge fan. But a huge fan of having the first new class in 2.5 years introduced to the game. Really, really excited about that. Gravy has the ability as an instant, not an action as the other ones, but as an instant, you destroy a gold you control and tap. You draw a card, then discard a card. So this is looting, right? You go through your deck, you find the cards you need, and you fill your graveyard with the cards you need to be in your graveyard. So there's huge synergy potential here with the Watery Grave ability. The second ability says, if a blue card has been put into your graveyard this turn, you may play cards with Watery Grave from your graveyard. So it's really hinting at something super powerful, because being able to play more than the cards in your hand, being able to play, not just one, but maybe multiple cards from your graveyard during a turn, that is again giving you insane value if it comes at not the gigantic cost, right? Because instead of a 4-card hand or a 5-card hand, maybe you kind of have a 7-card hand because you looted once. And now you can play all these Watery Grave cards from your graveyard. So huge upside in value here. So first of all, gold lets you loot, and that then has a dual meaning, right? You both find the cards you need in your hand, as I said, but also fill your graveyard with Watery Grave cards, and you turn on your second ability by discarding a blue. And that's why I'm expecting that to maximize the synergy of these abilities. Probably many, if not all, the Watery Grave cards are likely to be blue. Because then by simply looting with 1 gold, you draw a card, you discard a blue Watery Grave card, you can immediately play that card, right? Because otherwise you would need to jump through a lot of hoops just to play one of these Watery Grave cards. You need to first discard, let's say it's a red Watery Grave card. You need to first discard it to some other ability or some other turn, and then you need to discard a blue, and then you can play the red that you discarded earlier. So it starts to get a little hoop jumpy for my taste. I think it's gonna be a lot of blue Watery Grave cards. And even though this doesn't say once per turn, I'm assuming that the tap ability means it's one per turn. And let's actually talk about the tap ability. So what I expect it to mean is that it's basically a universal once per turn cycle ability, where instead of these once per turn, actions, for example, they are referred to by themselves. But this one is universal in the sense that many different cards could be tapping your allies, for example. So here you have some examples on, board the ship, paddle faster, and hoist them up, where each of them has an ability where when this attacks or defends, you may tap an ally you control. And if you do, this gets +1 block or go again or overpower. So what I mean by universal is that you can only tap one ally once, even though you might have 4 different cards that ask you to tap an ally. So instead of these once per turn actions or once per turn instants that we've been seeing so far, this works across different cards and not just within the container of that one card, and thus is kind of more universal. And when I say once per turn cycle, I expect your cards to untap or unexhaust or ready either at the beginning of your turn or at the end of your turn. More likely at the end of your turn, because that seems to be the kind of the cleanup phase in this game. And what I expect the Watery Grave cards then to be are probably actions that create pirate allies. Some sort of ghost pirates or, zombie pirates or whatever that can potentially attack. Still not clear, but, allies so far, they've all been able to attack. And maybe more importantly, maybe less importantly to be seen, they can be used to pay these tap costs of other cards that enhance those other cards. So you want to amass gold to be able to kind of get your engine going, your engine of filling your graveyard, playing those watery grave cards from your graveyard, kind of having extra intelligence as a result of that. And then you want to fill the board with these allies, because the more allies you have, the more cards you can enhance by tapping those allies. And maybe you want to attack with some of them and use some of them for tapping. So, you know, it could also be that many of the allies are such that they benefit from being tapped. So instead of you wanting to attack with them, you want to use them for some of these abilities because maybe they have a bonus from being tapped for an ability. Let's see. So how do you then create the set? How do you create the draft set with these cards? You probably need some sort of cross synergies across the classes. I think part the Mist Veil was the set that this probably gets compared to the most, in the sense that there's one talent and there are 3 heroes of the 3 different classes in that one, you know, and they all share that talent. So all those talent cards are basically going to be generics for draft purposes, right? So how do you then create synergies that are there for 2 classes but not 3 classes in order to make draft more interesting? And I think the most obvious one is between Ranger and Necromancer, where you want to be looting, because at least the Necromancer wants to fill their graveyard. They want to discard these blues and these water grave cards, but then the Ranger wants to be drawing cards, because if they draw cards, they can load arrows. So this draw discard kind of fills you know, a different role for each of these heroes. And then you might also be wanting to graveyard fill in both of these heroes. So you might have some milling or something like that, self-milling or something like that happening, right? That's to be seen. When it comes to the other combinations, I'm not sure at all. This is pure speculation. But what you can already see with the Mechanologist and the Ranger is that both of them have some sort of card draw in their abilities. The Ranger wants to draw cards to load arrows, and the Mechanologist draws cards when they play crank, you know, or when they crank twice. So maybe there's something around drawing cards beyond just having gold, right? Or maybe there isn't. I don't know. Or maybe it's something completely different. And the only thing I could think of for the Necromancer Mechanologist combination is creating tokens, because all of these heroes are creating something. One is creating golden cogs, one is creating harpoons, which are, you know, cards that go into your hand, and one is creating allies. I think the common ground between the mech and the necro is that you're creating tokens that go into play. So maybe there's something around creating tokens that could be a hybrid card or just a cross-class synergy between them. That's all I have for now. It's very, very early, but I'm super excited about this speculation season. It's going to be surely my favorite one. So stay tuned. And thank you so much for watching. Here's another video for you to watch, and please do subscribe if you haven't already. It helps me a bunch. Stay curious.